Welcome to the Green Tent Circle. Find a very comfortable place, relax, and I will call the circle to being open. The Green Tent Circle is celebrating our first year anniversary. We began, and Pat was one of the birth mothers in giving birth to us, as a place for women to come together. And the green tent can be under trees, it can be an actual tent, it can be on the beach, it can be in your living room, it can be in a church room, it could be at a cafe. But coming together where we deeply listen to one another. And we really listen to one another as we care for one another, care for ourselves, and care for Mother Earth. And so we are into the listening, caring, and action. And we meet every Saturday, and everybody is welcome at noon at this time. And we have just now started our Illuminator series of women who we know you want to hear more from, who you want to know more about their work. And we have all of their information on our website. You'll see Patricia Fero's information, and she also has a website, patriciafero.com. And it's a time for us to come together to see what we can do together. And just by being together makes a difference, because we know every circle that's formed creates the tipping point of transforming patriarchy into the place that nurtures all life. So welcome everyone, and welcome Patricia Fero, who is not only a good friend, so I'm going to just call her Pat. She's a wonderful colleague to so many people. She has, as a psychotherapist, she is very much into knowing how to listen, to pull out the nuggets, to pull out what women really want to find out for themselves and then bring into the light. And Patricia's book, the whole thing of what happens when women wake up. Pat, you've been helping women wake up, finding their purpose, finding their mission. And we know that more and more and more women are waking up to saying it's time for all of us to make a difference. And then now she has a new book out, and she's going to be talking about all that. But what happens when women converge? And we know that if we don't converge and work together, how in the world are we going to change around the dire things that are happening on our planet, on Mother Earth? So I don't want to go into too much because you want to hear from Pat, not from me. So I'm going to put myself on mute and put her on speaker. And there you are.
Oh boy, the tears are starting to come already, and my heart is like exploding. I knew, because I have so many extraordinary women in my circle, that we would have an extraordinary energetic vortex here today. And I feel it so strongly. And it's just, seeing you, Peggy, makes me so happy. I'm so delighted that you're here. The first thing I want to do is, I don't know how well you can see it's a photograph behind me. And the photograph is a photograph of my grandmother's farm, one of those aerial views when at some point these small planes would fly over, and then they'd sell the photos to the property owners, usually farmers. That's really where my roots in connection with Mother Earth began. I spent my childhood playing in the fields, sloughing the hogs, gathering the hens, dragging a dead sheep out to bury it, playing in the corn crib. And I realize now, in a way that I didn't understand before, that these experiences anchored my roots into Mother Earth and my love affair with Mother Earth. And that was really what brought me to the green tent when Anne first suggested it, because we all know so much about circles. You know, Jean Bolin was my first and primary mentor. I hadn't met her yet, but I read everything she wrote. She gave us so much information about circles. But then when Anne suggested the green tent, and things morph and change, but what we were really looking at, but I think it's just broader now, was circles, the reverent, powerful listening that we do in circles, but then moving into action on behalf of Mother Earth. And that's what drew me to the green tent. And then I ran off and did all kinds of other things like I do all the time. The other thing that I want to do in starting, and this is a gift for me, from me, because public speaking is something that's pretty scary for me. And I was on a call with two beautiful women that are here today, Leah and Erin, on Wednesday, and Erin shared a magnificent story in the energy of our call last Wednesday. And the story that she shared was something that I'm assuming is factually true, that elephants, I think we all know, are the herd is pretty matriarchal, and if a sister elephant is hurt, vulnerable, sick, the elephants circle around it and fiercely protect it, and then they kick dirt on it to hide the scent of the vulnerability, to protect her from predators. And so what I'm asking you as we start today, as I start talking, is if all of you will just please kick some dirt on me, because I can use some, the predators in my mind that say, oh, well, you shouldn't have said that. That's dumb. What you're going to say next. Those predators I need protection from. So just please kick a little dirt on me before I start. Oh, it's so much fun to see your faces. I'm really happy to be doing that. So I think what I'm going to do, and I know you're here to listen, and I don't know, sometimes people take notes, sometimes they don't, but something came up as I was really telling my story, writing my story, and thinking about what I was going to do. Marilyn knows, most of my friends know, I tend to go pretty deep. And so what happened as I was writing my story is these seeds emerged of what were qualities or aspects of my, I'm going to say my story, but at this point, I think I'm going to call it my journey. So what I noticed as I was writing my story, about starting with what happens when women wake up, and then at least my writing journey and my journey in the energies of the collective feminine, was starting with what happens when women wake up, and then at this point ending with what happens when women converge. But one thing I do want to say is that some of us are creating a women's village at the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago in August. And that's a pretty exciting place to be moving toward as well. So I'm all about the collective feminine. But what I noticed as I was writing, these things just popped up, was in my process, there were these diamonds, these aspects of things that popped up as I was writing. So if anybody happens to feel like writing, I can write it in the chat box later, was these things that happen on our journey, and they're seeds that we can pay attention to as we really look at our own journey. There's another thing that I do want to say, I don't want to lose. Years ago, my inner guidance popped out strongly and gave me this awareness, insight. And what it was, and this was before 2012, that we were all looking forward to 2012 and beginning of a new world, and here we are still. But what came up was, at this point, at this time on the planet, whoever can be used will be used, and to the highest level possible. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. So I'm doing my work because I'm called to and I want to and I'm committed to, but obviously everybody else here is doing their work, and each person's work is so incredibly important. So maybe even some reflection on your own journey might have some value, reverently listening to your own self and writing it out. So these are things that came. As I was on my journey, what I noticed were synchronicities, so many, countless, work, that it was a lot of work, and there were obstacles, there were allies, and there were detours, sometimes long ones, sometimes giving up, sometimes changing course, sometimes deepening or sometimes abandoning my connection with myself, sometimes inspiration. So I just thought that was interesting because, you know, when you see somebody that's doing something, it's so easy to assume that it was just a path, a smooth path, and nobody's paths are smooth. All of our paths have all of these things included. So having said that, I'm going to start with what really I think began to open me up to the idea of writing what happens when women wake up. Strangely enough, the first thing that happened was I went to a psychic. I don't take things that psychics say as gospel, never have. But this person said, you're going to write a book titled What Happens When Women Wake Up. And I thought that's kind of interesting since I never even thought the word waking up. This was probably in probably about 2003, probably. And so I just, you know, she said that, and I said, you know, what about this boyfriend? You know, that's what I want to know about. That was that. And I went on about my life, but it would pop into my mind every now and then. And I would think, did I just make that up? That's very strange to get a book title like that. So one day, some of us can remember what Walkmen were. I had the psychic had made a tape. So I put the tape in the Walkman, had it out of my office. I had a break, I was working, and I pushed the button, and in the middle of the tape, it said, what happens when women wake up? And I went, oh, all right. And so I, you know, another sign that was impossible to ignore. And then, Marilyn, I'm so glad you're here because these early roots are so much fun. And then a client told me about something she found online called Gather the Women. And I went, oh, wow, that sounds really interesting. And at this time, I had never heard the phrase divine feminine in my life. I happened to notice, as I was starting to pay attention a little bit, I would notice a book title in a bookstore, and I go, oh, they're talking about the divine feminine. So I'd buy the book, and then, you know, more things would just come and come. So at any rate, famous last words, I called Marilyn Nyborg. I want to say the rest is history, actually. Now I'm into the field and it's just coming, and my notes are not going to count. So Marilyn sold me, being the wonderful saleswoman that she was. And I was sold, and I was a regional coordinator, I think probably immediately. And on the same day that I called her, Victoria Hanshin called her out of the blue. And Marilyn said to me at some point, well, no, she kept saying, the two of you need to connect. I feel like you guys need to connect. And we didn't for the longest time. And then Marilyn, another prompt, she said, well, you know, she's involved with something about these grandmothers. She's talking about these grandmothers, and she lives in Pittsburgh, and she's doing something about this grandmother's film. And I thought, all right, I'll call her. So I called her, and with Victoria, the rest is history as well. So these are things that just following the invisible thread. These are the things that happen. One of the things that's coming up for me right now is that the grandmothers that Marilyn was alluding to and Victoria was talking about were the 13 Indigenous grandmothers. And in particular, Victoria formed quite a connection with grandmother Flor de Mayo. As so many of us know, grandmother Flor de Mayo has quite a wonderful presence now. So many of us are able to have contact with her, her incredible work. One of the things that grandmother Flor de Mayo shared with Vic, I actually had it, but I'm not going to try to find it, an image of, I think it's called the Dresden Code of the Mayan calendar. And I may be saying some things incorrectly, I'm not sure. But grandmother Flor de Mayo showed Victoria how the calendar, the Mayan calendar, goes right to left and like a serpent. And the final glyph on the Mayan calendar was 2012. And the image shows the staff of power being handed to the feminine. So we've been knowing it, we've been in it, and we've been getting all kinds of different clues along the way. So I'm still here, not having written anything yet, but oh my God, here you are again, Marilyn. So, so I became, I don't know about you guys, but I'm really having fun. Being a Gather the Women regional coordinator, my first circle that I ever sat in was with Jean Snowden. And I have a little story about Jean that I really, really love to say. So we were in, I think it was Minnesota, it was a convent, beautiful, big room, and I'm there. And I'd heard these rumors that Jean Boland was going to show up. And so I'm there and people are milling around, it's a break. And in she walks. And I'm going, oh my God, that's Jean Snowden Boland. And so nobody's around her. She just walked right in. And so I walked over to her and I said, oh my God, I said, I'm so happy to meet you. Your book, The Tao of Psychology, Synchronicity and the Self, was the first book on my spiritual journey, the most important book on my spiritual journey. And Jean just kind of put her hand on her heart and said, oh, that was affectionately, she said, that was my first book. And so then that was that, and she went off. And then we're still not reconvening. And I swear, this stuff I'm telling you, yeah, I'm not making this stuff up. It's pretty interesting. So Jean goes off and she's in this big room and she's standing there alone. And I'm going, oh my God, she's just standing there and nobody's talking to her. So I went over and I said, hi, Karen. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't help it. I just have to tell you, I just can't even believe you're here. I'm just so happy to meet you. And she goes, just, I don't know how to say it right, but just like, and that was that. And I walked away. And then I got to sit up closer so you guys can see me a little bit better here. And then I did it a third time. And she was over there alone. And I said, I promise you, this is going to be the last time. I said, I got this white shadow thing, and I'm trying to work on it. The white shadow is like projecting all your positive qualities onto other people. And it was bad. I spent 10 years in analysis, still working on it. So I'm still working on it. And so I said, I promise. And Jean, kind of backed up. She stood in front of me and she held out her hands like she was reflecting my light back to me. And what I did, then we're getting ready to go into the circle. And I actually had a diamond votive candle that was on the altar. And I went over and I lit my candle. So that was, I have no idea when that was, a long time ago. And then I think it was another, this is how these seeds are planted and then they pop up and they bloom later. So then I think it was a different Gather the Women event, and we're in circle. I had found this phrase. I have no idea where it came from. it was, the phrase was a nation of women. And I got chills just saying it now. I had no idea where it came from. But what I did was I wrote it in my calendar, and I use paper calendars, and change them every year. So I just wrote a nation of women. And year after year after year, when I would change calendars, I would write a nation of women. I had no idea. And then when I was in Circle, at this Gathered Women event, I asked, we were open, I think the Circle was down or something. And I asked, does anybody know that phrase, a nation of women? And it was Marilyn who said, yes, that's an old woman's round. And the lines to it are, a river of birds in migration, a nation of women with wings. And then I knew. So I still hadn't written What Happens When Women Wake Up. So these things are happening. And then I had an experience that was very, very painful. It's a little bit private. I'm not going to share it, but it was excruciating. And frankly, I was angry. I was really, really angry. I was in this fury. And it was Christmas Eve. And I called a friend of mine and I said, I'm starting to write What Happens When Women Wake Up today. And I was in Whole Foods in Ann Arbor, and I walked over to Barnes & Noble, I bought a journal, and I started my first words there. And it was a very, very choppy journey. Very choppy journey. I went through 2 or 3 editors. There was an extraordinary woman named Ann Jones who had been on this path for a long time, who took me under her wing and supported me. So I won't, I don't think I'll go through too many of the details of the really difficult road it was, but it did happen. It ended up happening, and then it was done. I wrote What Happens When Women Wake Up, and then became more and more immersed in the collective feminine. And somewhere in my work and doing workshops and attending workshops, I came to I would call it my purpose, my mission, my role. And that was and is catalyzing, igniting the role of the collective feminine in planetary awakening. And that's me. That's what I am all about. So, so that happened. And What Happens When Women Wake Up was out, and and here we go. It was in Crazy Wisdom bookstore, and I don't know if Amazon was around at that time or not, but I got a letter from a young woman who's not as young anymore, named Leah, and she shared with me her story that she was recently divorcing, that she was lost, that she had no blueprint, no pattern. And What Happens When Women Wake Up fell off the shelf, like books do sometimes. And she reached out to me. So it was another thing where some time passed, the letter was beautiful. I was moved. She put her phone number there. This is back in the days when people called people up. And I had some time, and I thought, well, I'm going to give her a ring. So I called her. And I was very busy at that. I'm a therapist, and I usually work a lot. And so I had a little break, and I was getting my oil changed, and it was a really rainy day, cold, rainy day. So I called Leah, and we're talking. And these men that keep trying to upsell me, you need this filter, you need this, all these things they want me to buy. And I'm having this incredible, profound conversation with this woman. So we're talking, and then they knock on, I got my window up, they knock on my window, and they, hold up, and they try to sell me something, and I go, no. And then we're talking again, and then they knock on my window again, and I go, no. I'm like yelling no at these men during our conversation of yeses, all yeses. And that was our first meeting. And then the rest is history with Leah and me. So What Happens When Women Wake Up is out. I met so many women. I connected with so many women. through Gather the Women and through workshops that I did and workshops that I attended. So I'm, fully immersed. And also learning about, and this is thanks to Jeannie DeRusso, and Victoria too, I think, the incredible intensity of profound listening. And I became more and more immersed in the realization, and this is also from Circle Process, that when we come together and we deeply listen, that a higher energy or a deeper energy, an extraordinary energy moves in. So then I decided that my next book, and this is before 2012 still, was going to be called Sisters Stewarding the Shift. And it was a beautiful endeavor. And Jeannie DeRusso and I worked so hard for a long time. I interviewed several people, several women with this model, with this energy, all of us understanding the energy of Reverent Engagement, or now I call it fierce listening. And so we would just be there and we would just be tuned in, see what wants to come through, let it come through. The other is holding the space. When that person is completed, then we go back and forth. I actually created something at that time I called essence to essence communication as a model. And actually Jeannie took that to CSW one year. We had a bunch of flyers. So that's what Jeannie and I did. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And we were getting ready to, to put it together, to publish it. And it couldn't happen. It couldn't happen. It was beautiful. The process was beautiful, but it didn't read well. It didn't read like a book should read. It was too meandering. It carried a beautiful energy, but it wasn't a book. And so I called my editor, who's worked, Charlene Bovo, who's worked, I've worked with on several projects. And I said, can you, and we talked about the lunar feminine and the solar feminine. And I think of the lunar feminine as kind of the upper three chakras, and the solar, the activation of the lower, I guess upper four, and then I don't know, the heart's in there somewhere. So I called Charlene and I said, let me send you this manuscript and let's see. It felt too lunar. It felt too, sometimes I like to say floating in oxytocin. It just didn't have what it needed to have. So Charlene had it for a while. She walked the beach, meditated. She called me up and she said, you have to start all over. I went, whoa. And I stayed on the phone with her for a few hours, and then agreed. Oh, because what I was trying to do was infuse the lunar energy with some of the solar energy. We were calling it like an IV of solar coming into the lunar. But it really didn't work. So I started over. So she would, we created some kind of an outline. There were some pieces that we could keep. She would write to me and say, you need a piece on this. And I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd meditate. I'd spin in circles. I'd sit down. I'd write. And that's how we wrote what Sisters Stewarding the Shift became Sacred Marching Orders. The subtitle for Sacred Marching Orders is Igniting the Solar Feminine at the Dawn of a New Earth. And that was a much more powerful, strong, active energy, and that I felt was important. And so that happened. So this is my writing journey, I guess, is what's happening. I don't know exactly how this happened, but Sacred Marching Orders, I loved. I did workshops with. I know people that really found it impactful. So this is still though 2010. And so I worked with Sacred Marching Order. Oh, this is the I don't know what I wrote, the detour, because I was feeling very discouraged with my women's work. And I said, there's too much spiritual bypass. I'm out of here. I'm going into my shadow. And so I stepped out completely, got into analysis 4 days a week on the couch for 10 years, working with my shadow, then returned. So so that happened. That was a heck of a detour. And somewhere around 2019, I was talking with a friend, Linda Robinson, and this was the elections where the women were, AOC came and we had this big wave of women coming in those 2019 elections. And I was talking with a friend of mine, Linda Robinson, and I was just kind of playing around. And I said, God, I wish I'd written a book called What Happens When Women Wake Up. And she said, do a second edition. And I went, oh, that's a good idea. So what I did was I interviewed, I don't remember how many women it was, asked them, how have you seen What Happens When Women Wake Up was published in 2009. So I asked each woman, how have you seen the rise of the feminine in the last 10 years? And so as I interviewed each of these women and recorded, then I went through and pulled out the nuggets from each of these interviews and then included that at the end of, did I don't know what you call it, put out a different edition of What Happens When Women Wake Up, second edition, and included the observations and the energies of the rise of the feminine from 2009 to 19. So that happened. And then things are still brewing, I guess, would be a way to say it. And I think this has to come in here. And that is, Marilyn, you know how we tried to get to Melbourne in 2009 and didn't make it. And I heard from women, some of the women that I'd interviewed with What Happens When Women, no, it was CSW, where Phyllis Karat was on the panel. And I had heard stories from so many women about what happened in Salt Lake City in 2015. And I was not there. And I did not like that at all. But I heard about it from so many different people. And then we were at CSW, whatever year that was, and there's the panel, and there's Phyllis Karat. And I'm going, oh my God, that's Phyllis Karat. And so when the panel was over, anybody that knows Phyllis knows who she is. I walked up to her and I said, oh my God, kind of like I did with Jean. Oh my God, you're Phyllis Karat. And she's just so gracious. And I said, she's trying to give me her phone number and I'm trying to give her my phone number. And neither one of us can figure out how to get it in our phones. and then Ann comes up and says, Phyllis and I are going to lunch. See you later. And I went, oh, well. And so that happened. And I don't even remember how and then in the writing of the second edition of What Happens When Women Wake Up, I asked Phyllis if I could interview her about Salt Lake City. And no, I'm sorry, that was in What Happens When Women Converge. Sorry. So somehow, Anne, you're a savior here now too. So in an email that I almost missed, you told me about it and I hadn't seen it. She said, Phyllis Karat is going to be in Michigan. And I went, oh my God, you had sent me an email. So I looked it up that weekend. Phyllis was in Belleville, which is 20 minutes from me. I was there, obviously. And that's where Phyllis and I, really made a wonderful connection. And my friend Gretchen became completely immersed in Wiccan from that time. I'm sure from many lifetimes. And then she and I took the train to Chicago and then saw Phyllis at the Theosophical Society in Chicago I don't know, a little bit later. And then, you know, Phyllis and I have become, you know, friends. So, so women are converging. I get that. That's the message here. I am in the energy of women converging. So during COVID, when there was, you know, Black Lives Matter events and more attention to white privilege and racism, that was kind of an energy that was prevalent at a certain time. I don't remember 2020, 21. I was getting murmurings around writing around a nation of women coming together. And so I called Charlene again and said, you know, I want to go to town again with another writing. At that time, at the beginning, we were calling it What Happens When Women Ally. And that was the working title. But then, with just one thing leading to another, murmurations of starlings were somehow showing up in this with the nation of women. And I started thinking, maybe What Happens When Women Ally might be a bit of an appropriation of the Black community. So we decided to forego that language with the title and moved to What Happens When Women Converge. So Charlene is a magic woman, and I did, I think it was 11 interviews. I see these interviews as aspects of the divine feminine in individual women. And we kind of, I don't even like the word segmented, but we kind of highlighted qualities that each of these women were speaking about. And then Charlene did this extraordinary editing job. So I think what I'm going to do, given what I noticed the time was, is we're now at What Happens When Women Converge. And I did have just a couple of readings from the book that I think I will read, because they'll give you an idea of the book, which I can hold it up. The beautiful artwork was done by Leah, and it's on Audible. I turned it into commercial. It's on Audible now, and Dale Allen has read it generously for me on Audible. So I think what I want to do is read just a little tiny bit in What Happens When Women Converge. I speak about Reverent Engagement, and then I also have pictures, gorgeous articulations of these different qualities that 11 of these amazing women that I interviewed right. And something, actually, it was Erin, who is still here, realized when she was reading What Happens When Women Converge, that each of these qualities we could really explore within ourselves. Okay, so here's the first little part I'm going to read. And this is the preface, and it's titled Reverent Engagement. As I sit in my sacred writing spot, watching the Canadian geese graze and nap by the edge of the pond, I plug into their energy field. I have the fleeting thought, you can be my audience. Although it sounded like a funny thought at first, I immediately received another. This is quote, my writing and all of my work is in the service of beautiful Mother Earth and all of her creatures. So in fact, I am writing for them. What a surprising opening into the topic of Reverent Engagement, a term coined by my dear friend, Victoria Hanshin, author of The Seer and the Sayer, Revelations of a New Earth. Her book is a breathtaking chronicle of experiences created through Reverent Engagement over the course of 2 years with Indigenous grandmother Donna of the Mohawk tribe at the sacred site called Serpent Mound in Ohio. Victoria kept me abreast of her experiences throughout the actual experiencing and writing of her book. I had an eyewitness account of the magic created through Reverent Engagement. In keeping with my intention that the geese be my audience and deepening my connection with the geese as I wrote, I became more aware of their world. As I watched about 24 geese grazing, I noticed they were flanked at both ends of their groups by 2 more standing guard. Closer to me were 2 smaller groups napping. Those groups as well had a sentinel protecting them from intruders as they slept. Reverent Engagement is a communication with the natural world that creates an awareness of messages sent by nature. Most of us know a little bit about how this was a way of life in indigenous cultures. As I wrote, I sneezed, which brought an abrupt end to the napping and grazing of the geese. I wondered, quote, what is the message? What seemed to be such a small disturbance created a complete disruption in my listening internally for the message. I heard the sentinels stand guard over those who are made vulnerable by their inattention in grazing and napping. How do we stand guard and protect that which is vulnerable? Our earth, defenseless animals, children, and those living in poverty. Where are the guardians of the vulnerable? An important question. Predators exist, but how are the most vulnerable protected? The geese have their own system. Where is the system within humanity? It certainly could be the laws, but the laws have been adjusted to protect the predators and not the vulnerable. The other observation was that my one little sneeze disrupted everything. It seemed so small, yet the impact was enormous. Everything changed. We impact our natural environment in an almost infinite variety of ways every day, but we ignore the impact of our actions. I remembered the stories I heard as a child that Native Americans knew how to walk in the woods without disturbing a twig. On the other hand, we, roar through with bulldozers and gigantic drills, rupturing Mother Earth, releasing toxic fluids into our groundwater and exploding the ground, creating earthquakes. What a powerful lesson the geese offered this afternoon. Using Reverent Engagement, I thank them for their message. As I reflected on the urgent need for guardians for Mother Earth, my friend Robin Milam pops into my mind. Robin is co-founder of an organization creating a Bill of Rights for Mother Earth. Claire Dubois, who founded Tree Sisters, is another powerful woman acting to protect Gaia. These 2 women act as guardians. Countless others invest their passion, time, and energies in this way. I was ending my experience of Reverent Engagement when a ladybug crashed into my head and landed on the paper I was writing on. Following the teachings of my friend Victoria, I asked myself, what is the message? The old childhood verse popped into my mind. Ladybug, ladybug, fly away home. Your house is on fire and your children will burn. I wrote in Sacred Marching Orders, the house is on fire and here is the water to put it out. I believe the water to put it out is our own Reverent Engagement with ourselves, with one another, and with Mother Earth. As we listen and receive the messages, we act from love on behalf of all life. Living life with Reverent Engagement, immersed in deep listening and then acting, motivated by love, is exactly what the world needs now. I'll just say, so the book, the way that we organize the book, Charlene and me, is I talk about Reverent Engagement, the 3 types, and then the first part is my connecting with the earth when I go out in the woods and listen, and message that I receive. So there's Reverent Engagement with the natural world. And then each of the conversations that I had with each of these extraordinary women was also obviously sourced through Reverent Engagement. I think I just want to read this one piece, this one little piece from the back that Charlene actually wrote. Oh, heck, I'm sorry. I'm going to read the whole thing. All right, here we go. So it goes, today's clarion call and connection template for women across the planet. We've witnessed a rising of the feminine. This mass awakening has morphed into a nation of women. We are now poised to excavate the potency to become an even mightier force for oneness and love. Reverent Engagement is the key that unlocks the door to our future. Now take a front row seat. This book is a practical template comprised of women who generously share the intimacies and intricacies of their own journeys. It features rich conversations with 11 women who have their feet, this is the part I wanted to read, who have their feet firmly planted on the various aspects of the convergence superhighway. So each is an expert in her unique right, whether by credentials or real world experience. They share what they know so you can step onto an unencumbered path. These field notes equip you to witness and actively engage the force that is convergence from your unique inner landscape. If you're ready to experience the rarefied form of women who have gone before to pave the way for you, this book is the invitation presenting itself to you right now. Come in, start turning its pages. In the end, you'll set down this book inspired and equipped to unearth the stratum of your own potency in service to Mother Earth and self. And I think that maybe the last thing I want to say, having talked too much and still not enough, it's all of us. It's all of us. I think that whatever I was going to say went away, and it's all of us. So thank you so much for listening and being here and seeing your faces that I love and making it so much fun. It's really, really nice.
Well, I think we should give you a standing ovation, but for several reasons. No, let me just say. One is how you always speak from your heart. You speak from your heart, you speak from experience, and you always include those who have helped you along your journey. Always. You're wonderful at naming all the others. Mm-hmm. Plus your beautiful writing, your beautiful work. So I'm going to stand up and you all can applaud however you want to, but I want to give you not only my deep affection and appreciation, but a standing ovation. And we'll open it up for questions and reflections, and we have about, 7 minutes or so. But that's okay. That is okay. That is okay. That's perfect.
Pat, I want to tell you that right from your opening, when I was finally able to log in, the usual technical difficulties, but I was just so drawn in by your invitation to reflect as you spoke about your journey on our own, potentially to take notes. I was not expecting what happened during the course of your speaking to happen. It was a great centering for me. It was a great centering as I listened to your story and your journey. You talked about 2012 when everybody would be called and utilized to their best possible, outcome to be utilized. And I just was reflecting along with you in my life course since 2012. It was extremely helpful. Like Anne said, you speak from your heart, recounting your journey that way, all the people in it, the twists and turns, the ups and downs, and ultimately the incredible beauty of it and all that you have done to serve and to give to others. It just was very, very, this is really healing. This is really, really powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Dale will be with us the third Saturday in January, so we can hear your story. And because we only have a few minutes now, I would love for everybody to open their mics, because we usually do on Saturdays, we do check-ins where people just check in what's on their heart. And then when we close, we do check-outs. So if you all can just give your name and where you're from, and just in a couple of words, how this has been for you. I think we'll be able to hear from every voice before our hour is up. So go for it.
Well, I just have to say, it was wonderful going down memory lane with you. We have been on the paths together, and it's always been a very rich connection for both of us, I think. We've traveled together and many ways. So thank you. It was fun for me too.
I'm Gail. I'm in Ottawa, Canada right now. And the words marching orders popped out for me because I've given myself my own marching orders, sold my home, divorced my husband. Now I'm joining the Grandmother's Circle the Earth Foundation, and we're going to circle the earth. So I got my own marching orders. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. I love your book. And I'm going to be sharing it with all of my eco-psychology colleagues because it covers so many different genres, also the world of rewilding. Thank you for writing this. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Karen.
Yes, and I just wanted to say I'm so glad I'm here. I want to apologize for being late. I've been having time issues lately, and even though I set my alarm, all of a sudden it was 11:20. I was like, oh no! So, but Patricia, I just feel like the web is getting stronger and stronger. And I had done a post this morning on my Facebook and on the Divine Feminine app about Artemis and NASA, which is, it's really neat about the podcast, and I'd love to read that paragraph, but I know we don't have time. But anyhow, and then Patricia commented on that, and I looked and remembered about this, and I'm so glad to be here. So I hope to make many more. So thank you.
Mhm.
And Karen, that's why I'm here. I found it on what you posted,
Oh, yeah.
and this is new to me. So I thank you very much for posting this connection, and I'm glad to join this group and follow the efforts of all these women. Thank you.
And to be clear, Green Tent is about stepping it up with activism.
Thank you so much for sharing your book with us. And I'm in Houston, and you found a fan from this side. I'll definitely read the book.
Thank you.
And I've seen great reviews about it, so definitely I'll have to go for the audio actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you, Pat. You're so good at weaving what happens when women converge. One part of that is weaving. You're so good at weaving a roadmap for us in whatever the current energies are. So this is such a gift to have this to kind of help us move through some of the things that happen when we converge. So thank you for always offering the support.